Hi everyone, this is tutorial 4 gameplay part 2. In this tutorial we're going to continue on with our breakout game. We're going to do 3 things in this tutorial. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a grid of blocks and we're going to destroy them with our ball and our paddle. The second thing we're going to do is when the ball goes out of the room, we're going to restart the game and we're also going to reset the score. And the third thing we're going to do is we're going to change the angle when the ball hits the paddle. So at the moment when the ball hits the paddle, it kind of goes off at a funny angle and it quite often goes out of the room when the game is quite difficult to play. So we're going to change the angle depending on where the ball hits the bat, and we're going to change the angle to make the game more playable. So at the moment you see it the angle that the ball goes isn't perfect, but we're going to change that to make it better. So I'll just X out of here and let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go up to our sprites and we're going to create a new sprite for our block. So I'm going to right click, create sprite. I'm going to call it SPR_block. And I'm going to load the sprite from my assets folder. So if you scroll down, it is this one here, this black one. So I'll tick that and just press open. I'm going to center the sprite. So center it, the cross will appear on it here. And I'm also going to modify the mask to ellipse. So this is the collision mask here. I'm going to say OK. I'm going to say OK. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on our objects folder, create object, obj_block. And I'm just going to add that sprite that I just added. There we go. And I'm just going to tick OK. So I'm then going to go into our room main. I'm going to go to our objects tab. I'm going to go to this drop down here and just tick object block. So our object block will appear here. And I am just going to add our object block to the room like so. I'm just going to add a couple of them around the place. Okay. So at the moment when we run our game, the balls will just be here, but they won't actually disappear or anything when the ball hits off them. So we need to add this piece of code to our object block to get them to do that. So once that's done, you can see down here in this little window what the game is going to look like. We're just going to tick up here and save. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back into our object block. We're going to add an event, a collision with the ball. So when the ball and the block collide, we are going to increase the score by 10 points and we're also going to destroy the instance. So I'm going to go to my control tab here and I'm going to drag in a piece of code into my actions. And I'm going to say score plus or equal 10. So again, it's saying score is equal to score plus 10. So it's like 10 relative. So it will go up 10 every time. And then I'm going to say instance underscore destroy. So it's saying destroy this instance of the block. So we're talking about the block object, but we're talking about an instance of that object. So just the one block is going to disappear, not all of them. So we'll tick OK here, and then we'll tick OK here, and then we'll just run our game to test. Okay, perfect. So there you go. You can see when the ball hits off one of the blocks disappear. Great. Now the ball is bounced out of the room. Okay, fantastic. So we'll close that. Now what we're going to do is the ball bounced out of the room there, but our game didn't restart. So every time we'd have to keep running it and running it. So we don't want that to happen. So we're just going to say when the ball goes out of the room, restart the room, please. So we're going to double click on our object ball. We're going to add another event other from here, and then outside room. So basically, when the object ball goes outside the room, we're going to go to, then we're going to go to main one. This third one here where it says rooms, this third one here is restart the room. and then the room will restart, but we also want to reset our score. So the room will restart, but it might not necessarily set our score back to 0. So we're going to do that now. So we'll go to our scores tab and then set score to 0 and then say OK and then tick OK. And then just run it again to test. Okay, perfect. So every time the ball goes out of the room, it restarts and the score goes back to 0. Great. So now we're just going to fix the way the ball bounces off the paddle. It's very difficult to play and it bounces in a funny angle and it doesn't actually stay in the room. So we're going to change that. So close that and then we're going to go into our object ball. So before you come in here, just make sure that all your sprites are centered and that the collision shape is an ellipse for the two balls. So we did that up here. So make sure, yeah, modify mask, make sure it says ellipse and make sure everything is centered. So your paddle, your ball and your block. So I'm just going to go back into object ball. I'm going to go to this object paddle, the collision with the object paddle, and we're going to go back into this code. So we're going to add a few lines of code to this, which basically changes the angle that the ball hits the paddle, so that the game is essentially more playable. So under here, I'm just going to create a new local variable var direction, well, dir, but it stands for direction. And I'm going to say is equal to point underscore direction other dot x comma other dot y comma x comma y. So when it says other dot x and other dot y, it's talking about the paddle's x and y coordinates, and then the x and y at the end are referring to the ball's x and y coordinates. So I'm then going to add motion underscore add dir underscore or comma 8. So this is just going to add a vector type collision. So it's going to create a collision that, depending on where the ball hits the paddle, the angle is going to be different. So don't worry too much about what this means exactly. We're just going to, when we run the game, you'll notice the difference. So I'm going to set the speed back to 8 because we always want the speed at 8. And direction plus or equals 2 plus random 4. So this piece of code here is to stop the game going on a loop. So sometimes the ball might get stuck in an endless loop. So this piece of code will just stop that from happening. So don't concern yourself too much with what it is. So that's it. And we're going to save this. And we're going to say OK. And then we're going to run it. Okay, so there you go. Now when the ball hits off the paddle, it moves in a better direction than it was before. So it kind of goes more straight down and across. So the game is more playable, more like a breakout game is supposed to be. Okay. So again, there'll be little things that will need to be fixed, but we'll do that in a later tutorial. Great. So in the next tutorial, we are going to look at adding some sound to the game to make it, more engaging. So thank you very much for watching. Bye now.